Alright, in this video we're going to be taking a look at how we can start building some simple networks inside of Substance Designer. And we're also going to take a look at how we can combine two different bakes into one final bake. So if you paid attention to the earlier videos, you saw that this helmet was actually made of two parts, this main part and then this part here. And then I had to do different bakes for the helmet and then this piece here, and now I need to combine those things together. Just a little note, I kind of messed up whenever I was making the last video and had this helmet resources mapped to this helmet all. So I went through and rebaked all that. So just baked all the maps for this, for the helmet part. And so you can see I've got all the resources in the right spot for the helmet. And then I went to this back plate lift, is what I called it, this thing here, and baked out all the different maps for that. And so here's all the different resources that we have here for this. So that's where all these resources are coming from the earlier video. This is new here, and we're going to take a look at how to build this real simple thing to blend different maps together and get a final map out of that. So you can see that this is the end result of the helmet and that back part put together as one final map. And everything else is the same. So we've got our our roughness, our metallic, and our AO. And all these other different maps are in the same spot. So let's take a look at building this very simple thing that we have here. We've got two different maps. So if we double click on this, you can see we've got the bottom part of that back plate and we've got this top part for the helmet, and we need to combine those together. So what was made was a mask that was generated, and I'm going to show you how to get this thing going. And we've got this node here that is a material selector, which we can actually select colors and build a mask from that, and that's being fed into this blend node that you can see here. So this thing sits on top of this map, and then this masks out everything except for this part, so it lets the white part come through. And then this is the final composite that you see here, and that's what's being driven on this mesh here. So from here on out, I'm going to take this helmet all that I have, and I'm going to click and drag that out because it's got this part of the helmet and this part together, so we can actually see the final results of those maps on this mesh here. Okay, and then everything is being fed into this shape by just going here and saying right click and say view outputs in 3D view, and then that pushes all these different maps that are being computed over here like we looked at in the earlier video, and it's pushing it onto that mesh. So if you ever get to the point where you need to recompute these things, you can always right click in here and say compute outputs, and it'll go through, and whatever kind of graph network you have, it'll build that and push it to these final outputs, which will then in turn push it to this mesh that you see here like that. Okay, so I think it's pretty easy for you to understand how we got these different normal maps on here from the earlier videos. We've got this helmet resources here, and you can just click and drag out a map like that, and that was put here in this spot. And then we've got our back plate normal map that was drug out right here into this section right there. So those are those two maps here. What you don't know yet is this blend node that you see here. So if I zoom in on that, we can take a look at this. And so it's got a foreground and a background, and it's got an opacity. So this is kind of like, think about like Photoshop and these different layers. This layer sits over the top of this layer here. And just like Photoshop, you can put a mask on like layer groups. So if you group layers together, you can actually mask what is visible inside of there. And so this is a mask that's going to mask basically this top layer here. So it's going to let it blend over the top of that. So this blend node, so we've got a lot of different resources over here, but you also have at your disposal, if you right click and you say add node, there's a lot of different things that you can add in through here on this thing. So we already saw how to add a uniform color. Let's take a look now at this blend node. So if we click blend, it's going to give us this node that you see here like this, right? Okay, the other thing we need is this mask that's generated, and this wasn't really talked about in the earlier video, but now it's a good time to talk about it. So we can go to here, this back plate, any piece that you want to bake model, bake maps for on the models. So we're going to say bake model information, open that thing up, and you can see that there's a map type. I'm going to uncheck here. If we go and add this, we can do this convert UVs to SVG. So if we add that map type here, you can see that we can choose this color mode. You can do hue shift, or you can do random colors. You can do material ID colors. We could choose that if you want. I'm going to not take that on there. I'm going to just go ahead and get rid of it because I've already baked that thing out. The method that I used was just use HSV color, so it just picks these different colors. But if I double click on this, you can see it makes the background transparent. We've got this color here and this color here, right? So we need to be able to select those colors and build a mask from it. So this might not seem so apparent, but you can use this material selector that they've got here. So here's where you come in here, and there's these different generators, noise, patterns, filters, all these adjustments. There's a lot of different things in here. So it's basically you know, got a lot of different functionality and different things for compositing, things like that. If we type in MAT for material, we'll get this material selector. You'll see that show up, and you can just click and drag that out. And that's the node that was generated here. So you can see that if we type this stuff in here, it's just basically going to filter out anything and show you everything that's you know, starting with material like that. And if we get rid of that text, that'll bring everything back to the normal viewing, so we can see in each one of these different folders in there. So this was just piped out to this thing, just like you see here. I'll just put this one down here just so you can see kind of what's going on. And so it's got these different materials. You can pump it up past 8, and this is basically going to give you 8 different slots. But you know, if you made more, it's going to keep adding more slots for you. And we could pull that thing down to like 3, and if you choose true for each one of these, this gives you a color that you can actually choose from. So in an earlier video, I talked to you about choosing these different colors that made kind of sense inside of ZBrush to make it really easy to select you know, a primary red, green, blue, things like that. But it is possible that you can just actually select this color and use the pick function and pick the specific color that you see here. So the red was already there. If I need to pick up this the cyan kind of color, I can say pick, click right there, and you can see it's picked up that color right there like that. I don't need the third one. There's only 2 colors there, so I can actually bump this down to 2. Just like that. And let's see if I turn that off and on. It's still going to show the third one, but it's just not being used. So I have these 2 there. If I double click on this thing, we should be able to see the mask that it generated. And this is the same thing that we have here. And then this was just piped out into this opacity in through there. So that's how this little setup was made for everything. And then it was easy to kind of, you know, get everything to kind of line up on the grid and get it nice and squared up like this. We see here, you can actually zoom in if you want to, you know, get it to line up perfectly. And if you just select a, you know, a selection around things, kind of like this. Let me just do these 2 nodes here just to show you what's going on here. If I right click and say add node and then go to add frame, whatever you had selected, it's going to put a frame on there, and then you can put a comment on this thing, and you can just call this like test or something like that. The cool thing about that is if you click it, you can move around those elements like that. And if I just select this, I can get rid of that thing. So now I've got this whole little setup for my normal map that works rather well for me. So that's how this was set up. I'm going to run through real quick, and I'm going to do this same setup for everything that you see here, at least as far as an ambient occlusion and this this color selector, you know, all these different maps. I'm going to run through and do this same setup. How I'm going to do that, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to select all this, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it. And now that I've got that one setup, let's see if I can grab just this one thing here, or if they're going to be, nope, let me copy and paste. Let me see if I get out here. I'm just trying to get away from that thing far enough to where they won't grab to it. Okay, so I've got this. Now I can copy this, same setup, and paste it a few different times. So I think that's how I'm going to approach this. I'm just going to start replacing these different pieces, and you know, I could use this map, kind of like what we see here every single time, or I could take this and pipe out that one map to where it works for all the different maps when I'm done. So I could do something like this. That way, if I'm using just one texture, if I need to replace it or if I update that texture, it should push through all the different changes on there like that. So I'm going to take the time and I'm going to build this thing out, and we'll come back after that's done. Alright, all the graphs have been built, so let's take a look here at what has been generated. So we know about this mask, and we know that this is feeding into all these material selectors. And what we have here, let's go from the normal map. So each one of these is the same for the normal map, for the AO that you see here, for the mask ID, and for the curvature, position. Accidentally did two curvatures, so we got a curvature here. I think I might have just not changed the name on this. So this one is actually thickness, like that. Okay, and this is the thickness map. This is the world space normal map. Okay, so that makes sense. We made some stuff up here for base color and the roughness and metallic. Now the way that this one is a little bit different is we have this mask ID is being fed out into this material selector here. So it's building these types of masks now. And what that's going to do for metallic, you can see I've got black and white here. So on the white parts, this is supposed to read something more like a plastic material, and then the black is going to be metal on there, like that. And we've got this same thing for roughness here. The roughness value is a little bit lower for the white parts that you see here, and it's a little bit higher for roughness in these darker areas, and that gets fed into this thing through here. And we also have something for base color, where we've got, you can see on this mask what it's feeding into. This white area of the mask is going to get this lighter color, and then the areas that aren't masked out are going to get this darker kind of color and through there. Okay, and so it's possible that we could interrupt this thing, and we could even add a little bit more to this. So we could do another add node, and we'll do blend, and we could make a color. Let's just do add node, and we'll do a uniform color. This time we could make it maybe a little bit like this orangish kind of color, maybe even through here like this. We'll try that out. And so I want this orange to sit over the top of it. We're going to try this at least for now. This orange is going to sit over the top of that like this. We'll feed this thing out and just see what happens. It's going to fill everything with this this orangish kind of color, and that's what I would expect for that thing. And then we're going to get this material selector again. I'm going to drag this thing out, and I'm going to connect it into the mask for this thing. And because it's black, it's going to mask everything out as far as this top part. So we want only one thing to bleed through on this. Now we need to use our material selector, or material ID, and this is where it gets a little difficult because we've got to zoom out this far like this, and we can take this pen and drag it up into here. So this result that you see here is going to feed into this thing. Now it automatically changed to this orange color because when we first make this node, it's going to have this this selection true for this red. So we can change that and fix the color of that. So I can click this and say pick, and I know this is the color right here for the visor. So that's what I want for that, right? And so if you follow this, let's rearrange this a little bit better. This orange sits on top of the result of this here. And we've got our material selector, and we selected just that part of the visor, so that only lets that area show through, and then it's being added over the top of this. one other thing that's kind of cool about these blending modes is these blending nodes is that we can change the blending mode from something like, you know, things that you see in Photoshop, like you could do a multiply and you can see it's going to do a darkening effect, or you could do something like an add linear dodge, and that's going to really brighten it up. Or you can just have it be copy, which is just going to be straight up whatever that color or pixels are of this thing. So you can see we could get, you know, even more in here if we wanted to. We could, you know, add some colors to these back pieces and through here. It all depends on what we have in this this thing here that we've baked out. So you can see that we'd be able to add color into this area. We'd be able to add color to these little bolts and things like that in that area. So anything that you've baked out color-wise from you know, ZBrush is going to be able to carry through and carry over. And likewise for this this visor material, we would have to interrupt some things about the metallic and start to make sure that we're blending through on that and saying, you know, if we're not happy with this thing looking metallic like that, we want it to be more plastic, we would have to do a little bit of work, just like we did with the base color on through here, like that. The only other thing that I want to kind of show you that kind of tripped me up just a little bit when I was first starting is, let's say we wanted to put some kind of pattern on this thing and kind of introduce it to this. I'm going to go ahead and make another blend node like this, and I'm going to feed the result of this out. Let me just get rid of everything on here, and right now I'm going to go ahead and feed this down here like this, and I want let's just do something that's really obvious. So I'll do these cells that you see here, and this is all color information. I believe this is a black and white image, and you can see if we try to feed it through there, you see this red line, it just broke this network because this is color information. We're feeding a black and white map on there. Sometimes it does okay where if you kind of push this through like this, it'll actually build a new connection for you to kind of handle that. But if it doesn't, and if you see these red lines like this and it is saying that it's broken, you might have to do something where you're doing a channel mixer. So if I grab this and pull this thing out, I can take this channel mixer like this and then pipe it through, and let's do another channel mixer in through here like that. And you can see I might not need this one here. Let me go ahead and bypass that. I really needed the channel mixer for the black and white one, but you can see it automatically kind of converts this thing from black and white to something that's going to spit out red, green, and blue, and so it keeps the graph from breaking. So that's definitely something that kind of tripped me up, for sure. The other thing that kind of tripped me up is this: how to get something to repeat and tile correctly. Alright, so I'm going to push this over here a little bit more because I'm going to interrupt this, and we're going to add a node, and we're going to use a transform 2D node, and you can see that it pushed it through there. So if you just created it out here like this, it would be no big deal. You could still pipe this in just like this. It doesn't matter. It just depends on, you know, if you want to break the flow or not by having it already pre-selected. So this thing here, if we double click on it, you can see it's got these different these things here, these little manipulators that you can click and drag. If I hold down Shift, I can drag this thing down. So I'm going to try to get it to tile a little bit. So it's possible that you can do that. Now you can see that when we do this, if we click this transform in 2D, we've got these offset, and we can make this a perfect number if you want. So I'll do 0.5, 0.5 like that. And then the other thing that we need to do is go to this matrix. So this is where I didn't quite understand exactly what was going on. So if I do a whole number in here, 2 and 2, you can see it's going to give me this tiling rate of 2 times across here. Now if I change these numbers here in Y1 and X2 and like this, it does a shear. So leave these numbers alone like that. And if I wanted this thing to repeat a bunch more times, so I could put like an 8 here and put like an 8 here, something like that. And you can see now I'm getting this thing to tile quite a bit more on that area. Again, these are this blending node. It's possible that you can straight up use the color on here. It also has an opacity, which you can kind of dial that thing back. So you could take this thing and really make it just barely on the surface like that. And again, you have the option to change the blending mode on here. So you could do a multiply, so it's going to take that color and it's going to multiply it over the top of everything that you see there, and you can dial back the opacity at that point for something like that. So we've got all these different generators and different patterns and things like that. So it's possible that you could take this thing, you know, and try finding something that you wanted to use within here for these different designs. I don't necessarily see anything that I'm crazy about, but again, we could use different stuff for dirt, things like that. So let's just try this. Let's take this dirt out here, and we'll use this dirt and we'll run it right into this right here like that, and interrupt that, and you can see now we're gonna change this thing from using those cells to this dirt. And we can change the tiling rate on this thing. Go to this right here, and I'll change this to 4 and 4 like this, just to change the tile rate. And then change this blending mode. I'll change this from multiply to an add, and that should lighten things up. And then we can change the opacity of this and kind of have it pull through a little bit more. So this should get you at least to the point where you're going to be able to start building some interesting kind of combinations. At least, you know, that's for the color there. I'm just going to take this stuff and get rid of it. So those are some different options that you have. Some other things that you have are these mask generators, which are pretty interesting. So we've got some of these different things. Let's just take a look at the paintware, or yeah, let's just do paintware. And this one expects, you can see it's got these areas what it's going to call for. So it wants ambient occlusion, it wants curvature, and a mask is optional for this. So let's take our ambient occlusion. Let's just pull it down by where we have this to make it a little bit easier to hook it up to. So it wants ambient occlusion here, like this, and it wants our curvature, which we built down here. It wants to run this here like this. So if we take a look at this, this is what it's going to build for us. So we can start to play around with some of the values on here and say pump up the levels on it like this, and we can change how much this thing actually occludes on here. Change the radius. Maybe if I drop that down, and we can play around with the variation on here too. So if you remember that curvature map that we generated, and how it's kind of feeding that into there with the AO, you can see what we're generating here. So now if we take this thing and we use this as something on here, if we interrupt this thing just like we did before, and we say add a blend node, and we'll go ahead and get rid of all this, get rid of this. I'm going to feed this into here like this, and I'm going to feed this into the mask, and I'm going to make a uniform color, and I'm going to make it white like that, and I'm going to pipe it right into here like this. So let's see what the final thing is here. This is going to start generating some edge wear for us on that right there like that, and then now we can start playing around with these values on this thing and play with the level of how much that actually shows through and bleeds through on this thing. Start messing around with the occlusion, see how much do we want that to actually occlude, and the radius we can bump that thing up quite a bit like that. So again, that's just color, but if we really want this thing to start having an effect on things, we're going to need to push this thing in other areas like the roughness and the metallic. So if we interrupt this here, we'll make a new blend node for this. We'll run this out to here. Let me just get rid of this like this, and then we'll add a uniform color. We'll pipe it into here, and then roughness. I'm going to make this, anywhere where this thing is, it's going to be black, which is going to give it a roughness of nothing, so it'll be nice and shiny on through there like that. And we could also make it feel like it's more metallic. So let's just take this and move this here. We know we need something like this, so let's just copy and paste it like that. We need to run this here like that, and we'll run this here, and I'm going to do a uniform color for this, and we want this to be, I'm gonna try making this full metallic like this. So you can see it starts to feel as if this is maybe exposed chrome or something in those particular areas where it's got the edge wear. Now what we can do is, because we're using this one node and it's being fed into these other areas, I know it gets a little bit messy with the wires, but it's possible that we can just change this one node and start to build up, maybe our contrast. And it moves a little bit slower because as it updates this map, it updates other maps as well. So we can kind of play around with these different values here. Oops. And I don't want that area kind of like that. Okay. So you can see now we're getting some cool edge kind of effects on here like this. So there's a bunch of them to play around with, and you're gonna kind of have to maybe play around with each one. Again, if you pull it out and take a look at what it's asking for, it's pretty easy to go ahead and plug in the right things for this. So this one's ground dirt, and again, that's where that position thing kind of comes from. And for that one, maybe that won't be as clear. Let's go to find the position right down here. Okay, there we go. And I can pipe out the position into this thing like that. But that's not really what I want, because I don't want to push RGB. Remember, we've got red, green, and blue, and each one of those equals out to some kind of direction. So there is something for splitting. So you can do an RGBA split. let's see if this is the right one that I'm looking for. So you can plug in RGB, and then you can spit out, I only want to use the red channel for this. And so when we double click on this, now you're going to be able to see the actual direction for this thing. So this is, again, this is the ground dirt where you're able to split off the RGB. Something else that we can do is we can, if we don't like the direction of that thing, so again, let's try to find the up and down, which would be something more like this. So you can see this would be generating a mask where the bottom of it is going to be more dirty, but if you wanted to inverse that, you can do an invert. You do have to know if you're going to do an invert color or invert grayscale, and in this case this is grayscale. So we can drag this thing out like this and pipe it in here, and you can see we've just flipped the thing for what that's going to be, right? And so again, this could be piped out and it could be generating some color for you. So this would be at the maybe the top of the mask now, or the top of the helmet. And if you wanted this thing to feel more like dirt, you could use this as a mask to feed in for color, and then also to change the values for the roughness and the metallic. And then you would be able to change the one node on here and change how much dirt is actually kind of coming through on there and change the contrast. So this is kind of the power of things, where once you get these maps kind of set up in a way, you're not just going to be driving values for just one thing like color. You're going to be able to drive at the same time values for color and roughness and the specularity. All those different things are going to come into effect with this. So it becomes pretty powerful. I'm just really kind of scratching the surface of what's possible inside of Substance Designer. So it's possible to basically do a full-on texture pipeline within this program and have it be kind of more procedurally generated like this, so you can put new assets in and kind of run it through. But I'm just kind of giving you a glimpse of what's possible. I really want to do more of the work inside of Substance Painter, because me as the more of the artist type wants to actually get in there and paint everything and kind of have a lot of control over exactly what this thing looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and save this thing up, and that's going to be it for this portion of the video. The next portion we'll be looking at Substance Painter and how we can take all these maps that we've generated out by going here and saying export outputs as bitmap. And you can just go ahead and save all again and make sure you're spitting those out, and then we'll take those resulting maps and then pull them into Substance Painter and start working on painting up our model.